little area of authority and influence, your sphere of influence. That's always what we hope here, that you will be a better man and a better person. Why man? Well, my show is written for you, the guy, because American men are highly atestosteronal. They don't have enough hair on their chest. They are very soft spoken, kind of weenie like it seems, and they have very weak handshakes. And if you have any kind of discussion in detail, they think that you're arguing with them. And this is very, very, very much, I think, the result of public education, or it should more accurately call it public schooling, where people don't know how to have any kind of extended conversation about anything without getting angry or offended. And so, since men are like that, and women know there's a problem here, I'm directing my program to them. And so, if you're my listener, a woman, just forgive me, okay? I'm really trying to help the man in your life become more manly, more vigorous, and maybe if he listens to me long enough, he'll want to have another child or two. I mean, that's something you want to have, but he's saying, well, no, honey, we can only afford two. So if he has a bit of optimism and a bit of comfort in his mind, and maybe in his heart, then he'll be a little bit more willing to take some risk, right? Take some risks on the future. He'll be willing to, as I suggest, divest nationally and invest locally. And what is more local than you, right? You're his beloved bride, and so you, the bearer of his children, and so you will be heartened and happy, Lord willing. The name is David Tulis. We cover local economy and the free market, and argue that you should love your neighbor and buy local. Now, it seems to me that the Chattanooga City Council is about to violate the Nooga Radio Nostrum. City Council and its 9 members, from what I can gather from the meeting on Tuesday, is not against the idea of putting the internet into a geographical map, to tie down the internet, to throw, if you will, a tarpaulin over the internet and say, we're going to control the internet here. We're going to be like the Chinese. And in fact, we've been watching how they do it in Beijing, right? How Beijing monitors free market transactions and the exchange of free opinion. Donna Williams, who is an appointee of Mayor Burke, she may have been to China to get some tips on regulating the internet and scraping data with timestamps, right? Very important. You got to be able to do that, Donna. Scraping the internet with timestamps of anybody who has a house that he is making available to visitors from out of town, even visitors from foreign countries, even Germany, right? Even people who are here from Germany are going to face a stringent law in Chattanooga that says, no, you cannot have a short-term vacation rental in your house if you are on this map. If you're on this map, in this geographical location with this address in the confines of the corporation of Chattanooga, not all the city, but these important parts, you will be able to have an Airbnb account. But if you're not in that map, sir, you're going to have to go out of business. I'm sorry, we're just going to have to shut you down. And if you don't agree with us, you're going to have to face some enforcement action. We have surveilled you. We have time-stamped your ad online, and we have paid our vendor for details on your offenses. These are offenses under the ordinance, sir. So I'm sorry, you're going to have to shut down. And you say your son wants to open an Airbnb in his house 2 blocks down, and he's not in the district. Well, I'm sorry, sir. You just better tell your son not even to think about it, because we are going to put a clamp down on him too. This is Donna Williams and the things that she is saying as she informed the city council Tuesday about the efforts to play the role of Beijing, Chattanooga, we could say, Chattanooga, the town where the internet is scoured for offending advertisers who have their houses available through any number of platforms, and they're inviting guests. They're inviting people from other countries, inviting people who may speak a different language, who may wear head turbans or wear long robes, as they do in some parts of Africa, inviting them here. They're planning on coming to Nashville and also Atlanta, so they're gonna park in Chattanooga and spend their week in the great American Southland, going to Nashville, going to Atlanta, but they're going to spend their nights here. for 4 or 5 nights, and they want to come to your house. We cannot have people like that here. Why? Well, the neighbors have told us they're concerned about security. So we have prohibited you, good sir, from having a short-term vacational rental business in your house. After all, we own all businesses in Chattanooga, and we will not allow it. If you want to find out how this works, go to Nooganomics.com. Nooganomics.com is our chief sponsor program, and I am the editor. Right, the editor is the mild-mannered man who makes it all happen, who makes the writers look good. And if he's the writer, well, he makes himself look good too. And the objection that you, my listener, need to register with the city council are 3. There are 3 objections. And let me just give you a kind of a thumbnail sketch of what they are. I think the main one is that the line on the map that Chip Henderson has created with the help of John Bridger from the planning agency and other very helpful and good people, right, who have taken the pulse of the community, as who wants to be on the map and who wants to be off the map, right? These people have contributed to the air of fear. That's what controls the Chip Henderson map, is fear of the unknown, fear of strangers, fear of visitors, fear of people making a secret profit. It is a very weak thing. And why, as Southerners, are we so fearful? Why? And see, that's why my show is written for men, because the majority on the city council are men, and they live in fear. It seems. Of course, Carol Burrs lives in fear too. She was very concerned about Chip Henderson's amendment to his ordinance bill that would extend the window for people who want to get in just in the nick of time to get in to have an Airbnb outside the district. She was very concerned that people might actually apply for that. For rezoning and get an Airbnb outside the district. In a way, Dr. Burrs was horrified at the prospect, and so she's got a lot of this sort of atestosterone fear too. And my thinking is different. My thinking is that we are Chattanoogans. We're courageous. We're bold. We're Southerners. And hey, guess what? We're Americans. We've invaded the whole world. Right? We have wars going on in about 80 countries. We are the dominant force for now. It's spent, but still dominant. And foreigners we deal with foreigners all the time. Why are we afraid of having visitors to Chattanooga? Why are we afraid of people coming from Nashville at an Airbnb house in Chattanooga on your street? This could be dangerous. Maybe, well, you may be right. Yeah, just think about this for a second. What if someone comes who's a Yankee? Someone from New York wants to come to Chattanooga, and he's a Yankee. And he talks like one. Or he's from Jersey. Well, maybe Chip Henderson's right. Maybe we should have a ban on Airbnb and like platforms if we have Yankees coming down here. They did, after all, invade us, and now we're going to invite them into our houses. Is that have we not been? Are we not unreconstructed, or are we reconstructed? Well, I know you're just I'm joking, right? You do know that, but that is the feeling that seems to control city council, is fear of strangers. Listening to people who are fearful of strangers, and listening to people who, when they asked Darren Ledford on the city council, what is Airbnb, because they apparently don't know, and he describes it to them, they say, no, I'm not for that. I'm not for that. And so he marks that down as one more count toward his assessment that 500 people told him, Darren Ledford, that Airbnb is something they don't want. And not a single person has told Darren Ledford that it's a good thing, and that it represents the sharing economy, that it represents the open face of Chattanooga, the openness, the gratuitous generosity, if you will, that is Chattanooga. And so there's going to be a vote tomorrow. It'll be the second reading of the ordinance, and I think there'll be an actual vote. And I'm not exactly sure on the protocol if it's going to be voted on again. But here, all right. So what are the faults of this ordinance? Well, number one is that it's just arbitrary and capricious who is in the district and who's not. And it's illegal because it is a pretended rule of law. An ordinance has the same power in the district of Chattanooga as a state statute has on everybody in the state, right? It's the same force. It is an equivalent force, though limited in its application and in its venue, right? It only affects Chattanooga. But it's arbitrary and capricious because one man is allowed to have Airbnb or a similar platform arrangement and be a part of that network, and a man across the street in a house that in fact has better shrubs, a new roof, and nicer paint, he's not allowed to be in that network, and he cannot have rental visitors. So that clearly makes it unconstitutional, because the law requires equal treatment for people similarly situated. And those two men are similarly situated, divided only by 30 feet of tarmac and a white stripe down the middle of the road. And also, there is not consideration for due process rights. You have a right to due process if you are to be deprived of a right. You have a right to rent your house out, and it is a property right. It inheres in you're owning the land, you're paying the taxes on the land, you're being liable for injuries on that property, and so on. That's a right to use the land in an innocent, harmless, and private relationship, which is what Airbnb is. And you have a due process right. If you're going to lose that, there has to be a showing that it's harmful. There has to be a showing that it affects the public health, safety, and welfare. And it can't. There's no way that anyone would even try to make the argument that having guests through the Airbnb network violates public health, safety, and welfare. Those 3 points undergird the exercise of police power in Tennessee. And also, the other right that's not really accounted for is the prohibition on takings apart from compensation. If you're going to take from me the use of my house and I'm in Airbnb, well, then you have to pay me. You have to pay me for the loss of all my business as long as I'm going to own that house. And we can suppose I plan not to move, and I plan to have my son take over the house when I get old and go into the nursing home. And he's already in Airbnb in another city. He plans to move here, take over the house, and run it the same way with just transferring his membership. Well, what about his income as well? So you're going to have to account for my loss of income as well. That's called takings. Takings cannot be done unless there is a public use shown. And the jury, in this case, a jury is the finder of fact. And the only fact at issue before a jury in an eminent domain case or a takings case is the dollar amount of the value lost. Okay, that's what the jury decides in eminent domain or takings cases. This is a taking. It's unlawful if it doesn't serve a public purpose. And no public purpose can be shown behind Chip Henderson's ordinance. If you go to Nooganomics.com, you can see a couple of stories about this. I've written, I think, maybe 3 or 4, arguing that we need to have constitutional government. We need to have government that respects the law and does not abuse the law. And I was a little surprised that Wade Hinton, who is the city attorney and who's the pivotal person on the council, in fact, because he sits in the middle of the council, he is the pivotal party, in fact. And he was willing to let the conversation drift. But you see, he's not elected, so he really couldn't intervene that way, I don't think. His job as the attorney is to let these people do what they want and protect them if they get into trouble. But he probably knows or should know that the $50 fine rule in the Constitution binds and limits city power. And it binds it to a fine of no more than $50. And that fine cannot be extended beyond that and to respect the requirement in Tennessee law for equal treatment and fair treatment. It is arbitrary and capricious to say, well, this is a $50 fine rule, and to get away from it, we're going to make the fine apply daily. Well, that was what was discussed at the city council meeting Tuesday last, and it's simply unreasonable to think. The reference was made to the discretion of the judge and so on, allowing that to be the case. Well, a judge who does that has to have that shot down by an appeal from that ruling. That would have to be appealed to the Court of Civil Appeals, which is where that would go. It's arbitrary and capricious to make the fine apply daily. Why not make it apply hourly? Why not make it apply every minute, right? 60 times 50 per hour is a fine. Are you going to withstand that? Well, no, of course not. but it was pointed out that if the fine limit is $50, then all anybody can do is to pay the fine and go about their business. And the city, by my analysis, is toothless. It's toothless. It cannot impose that fine past $50 without the very obvious rules against arbitrariness and caprice being evoked. And so the city needs to recognize that that it's on the wrong side of history, if you will, just as Christianity is said to be on the wrong side of history by asserting the glories and benefits and capital of marriage. So is the city on the wrong side of the law if it says that we are going to ban families from having being part of these networks, these very profitable networks, and we are going to close our city. What we have a choice, I would suggest, is between the open city, the gig city, the one open to the world, the one that makes real use of high-speed internet, versus the one that is closed, the closed city. That is what Chip Henderson effectively is saying we want to be. And so specific is he in this that he has a map. The map is of Chattanooga, and then within that map are the red lines of the special district, the special district. Those lines are a scar, effectively. And the scar has on one side the ban and pain, and then on the other side, it has submission. The pain is by those people who are blocked from having these networks. That would be those outside the district. The submission would be by those inside the district who we're told can get a license, can get a special permit to run their little bed and breakfast for visitors when they're not there, and to make a profit from that, to turn their largest capital asset in many cases into a revenue creating stream, an income stream. And those people, they have submission. Well, both are wrong. Neither should take place. If we believe in the internet, if we believe in high-speed internet, the promises that EPB has made, the gig city, the gig speed, right? That the gig city idea comes from the EPB speed of internet. And the question I think that you need to ask yourself and ask your city councilman or woman is, does that mean something? Does the gig city mean something, or is it just a bit of poofery, right? Is it just a bit of marketing fluffery that really has no substance and doesn't really mean anything? Because here we want the money, right? Here in this ordinance, we want money. The city seems to be grubbing after a few dollars and is overlooking the larger question of the wall, right? We have a wall around China. We have tens of thousands of people hired by the Chinese government to patrol the internet for scurrilous content, which would be everything from pornography to criticisms of the leader to jokes about the party. These things are prohibited, and people get into trouble for them. And we're now going to have city government with a budget of about $36,000 to hire a software vendor that will scrape the internet, as the economic development official Donna Williams describes it, scrape the internet and survey people who are making illicit and unwarranted and illegal advertisements for their property, trying to invite people to give them a high mark and come and stay in Chattanooga in their house while they're out on vacation. It sounds like an ideal arrangement, and thousands of people have been here already through these networks. There are the industry is about $2.5 million worth by Chip Henderson's estimate, as he told me, and about 600 families in the area are involved in this wonderful open line of service to strangers, looking out for strangers, giving them an alternative. That's what we want for strangers, to have an alternative. We've got very many fine hotels here, which pay the hotel motel tax, a very steep tax. And the goal by the city is to get these homeowners to pay the same tax on the service they provide. I suggest that there should not be anything at all in the way of regulation or taxation. Let this be a private and personal service from one family to another, or from a family, say, to a businessman coming to stay here for a few days to do some business. at Enterprise South. That's what we need to have. The free market, untrammeled, unfettered, and unmolested by legacy systems such as municipal vulture government, which Chattanooga City Council seems like it's about to become. I'm worried about that, and I think you should call your city council person today. Call that person today and say no on regulation. David Tulis.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader.